Like I said, this is kind of common knowledge, but not. I will say I feel like next year I'll probably end up moving. And I do want to say and acknowledge I'm super grateful that I can afford to live here and that I do live here and that I get to have these experiences. Right. Let's get real about New York City finances. This was my most requested video, and these are all just things I wish I knew before moving to New York City and just stuff I'm genuinely interested in, even if I didn't live here. I want to be more transparent about, you know, money and saving and just navigating your 20s, because really this last 2 years was the first time in my life I took on every single bill on my own. I feel like the first most common question I always get asked is how much do I pay in rent, and you know, what apartment do I have, what area. So I pay right now about $4,000 in rent. Well, my boyfriend and I combined. We have a 1-bedroom apartment that's 685 square feet, and believe it or not, 685 square feet is a big 1-bed for New York City. It's a little more outdated. Like our flooring's a little outdated, you know, our kitchen appliances isn't, you know, the newest, and we have like a galley kitchen over like the open, like trendy concept. Like our rent's going up next year, which is one thing I didn't know. If you were thinking about moving to New York City, I would just keep in mind, this is something I learned the hard way. If you found an apartment you love and you're like, this is at the tippy top of my budget, like I never want to pay more than this even next year, don't get it. Because the standard I'd say is about $200 every year they'll increase your rent. So if my rent this year is $4,000, they will probably bump it up to $4,200 next year, which they did. My lease is up next month and my boyfriend and I got that. I also wanted to go over my like checklist of things I wanted and didn't want in an apartment, and where you can like save and how it all evens out. So for me, a doorman was like crucial, because I get a lot of packages and I hear about them getting stolen so much, and just one of those things that as a woman I felt like I could go to bed sleeping better at night with that. So a doorman, I wanted good lighting, hence why I'm like up high, so I wanted to be up high. Also, the higher up you go, usually the more expensive the apartment, because unless it's a walk up, but usually if there's an elevator it's more expensive because the lighting's better and you don't hear as much noise from the traffic. When I first moved to New York, actually, I lived in a studio with my boyfriend in this building, but on the 4th floor, and it was only like 350 square feet. We only did that for like 8 months, and we knew we were gonna kind of upgrade to a 1-bed, but we heard everything, like everything. The lighting was horrible. So it just depends though, because you know, in other parts of New York, like the West Village, the buildings are a lot lower and most of them are walk-ups. Like finding an apartment with a doorman and like amenities and an elevator in the West Village is a lot harder than like my area, Columbus Circle or Upper West Side. Another question people ask me is like, how did you know what area of New York you wanted to move to? My boyfriend moved here before me. He was paying for a studio apartment for like $2,900, so just a little under $3,000 a month, and he picked Columbus Circle area because he found an Equinox more Upper West in Lincoln Square that had like the basketball court. It's kind of close to his work, and we just heard good things about it. I will say, I feel like what makes our $4,000 a month rent doable and like a cheat system is sharing a 1-bed with a boyfriend. Not that I'm saying to move in with a boyfriend or rush it, because I'm definitely not saying that, but it definitely helps, because if I lived with like a girl roommate, we'd need a 2-bedroom, and 2 bedrooms in New York I would say range like from like $5,000 to $6,000. I'd say expect $6,000 to $7,000 closer, unless you do a flex. But yeah, so that's definitely one hack. And I've always said, once I graduated college, I was just one of those people that I knew I'd either live at home for a little bit, move out on my own, or move in with my boyfriend. I was done with the roommate thing, because I don't know, sometimes I feel like with roommates, obviously there's respect and like I could be super close with them, but still I always like, I was weird about it. I like my own space. Like this really is my happy place. And yeah, I feel like I'm rambling, but I really think you need to sit down and budget and prioritize what you want and what you don't want, what you're willing to have. So my boyfriend and I end up splitting rent, and it's about $2,000 a piece right now. It'll go up to $2,100 next month. and he'll take on more utilities and streaming services, so he ends up paying a little bit more, which is nice. Breaking up by person, I feel like it's not that bad because I have friends in different cities over the US that are paying like $1,500, $2,000, even $2,500 for their own one bed, and yeah, that $2,000 might get them, you know, 1,000 square feet and a luxury apartment with like a gym and a pool and in-unit laundry, which is great. So your dollar carries you further elsewhere. I feel like that's common sense, but I definitely think if you want to live in New York affordably, you can find that. It's just you're going to be getting less for it. I don't think it hurts to write out a list of what you want and don't want in an apartment and areas you want to try out. I also think a good cheat code would be to live in Jersey, like Hoboken or Jersey City, if you got a job in the city but want cheaper rent, because you could get like a nice apartment in like Jersey City or Hoboken for like $3,000. But then you kind of need a car. And so I always say this to people, I'm like, you know, living in New York is expensive. Like, don't get me wrong, everything here is more, like groceries, just anything you would buy in New York, restaurants is more, rent, but we don't have a car payment. And I feel like that's another thing. Like, if I lived out in the suburbs, my rent would be cheaper, but probably tack on $1,000 a month for like gas, car insurance, and car payments. The subway is $2.90 per ride, but then I think they cap you at 15 rides. So don't quote me, but they cap you at either, I want to say 15. So if you take the subway more than 15 times, which is pretty easy to do because one way there and back, that's 2 right there. I feel like the subway costs honestly aren't too bad, but definitely something to think about. It's like, you know, each neighborhood, your dollar can go further, and there really is pros and cons. Like, another thing for me, so another requirement I had is I didn't want to live too close to the river. I wanted to be on like the main, like, I don't want to give away too much of where I live, but kind of in the middle, because the closer you get to the river, the less stuff there is, and it's just like darker. There's less subways over there. I feel like at night, not that it's not safe, but it's just further away from everything. Whereas I feel like 6th, 7th, and 8th Avenue is where like all the stuff are, where all the shops are. There's always people there, so I feel really safe walking on those streets. So a big requirement for my boyfriend and I is we would have to live on either the 6th, 7th, or 8th Avenue because it's just safer and it's easier to get subways. It's around everything, so yeah. And avenues are a lot harder to like walk between. So like going from 60th to 61st Street could literally take you 1 minute, but going from 7th to 8th Avenue could literally take you like 5 to 6 minutes. Like, they're long. Closet space, that was a big one. Like, our apartment has like 4 to 5 closets, which is amazing. I have toured one beds that I've loved and only have 1 closet in the bedroom. And I'm like, this is crazy. You would think, honestly, for New York and like being known for small spaces and like jam-packed, that they would have the storage thing figured out in these apartments, but no, they really don't. So you have to get creative with it, and it's still really hard. Like, we have five closets here, and I still like can't really keep a Christmas tree. I don't really have too much seasonal decor because there's just nowhere to store it. Winter coats is an issue. Grateful that my parents live in Philly, so lots of times they'll like drive up once or twice a year, and I'll like give them certain things I've outgrown that maybe I don't want to get rid of, but like one day when I have a future house or somewhere else, I'd want it. So they like store stuff for me, because storage in New York is not cheap. You could spend like $200 a month on storage, and I would love to get an apartment building a little more neighborhoody, a little more uptown for me, and with a gym and a little bit more modern, because our apartments, it's not bad, but I'd like something a little bit more modern. Some stainless steel appliances is like my dream, which sounds so funny because like all throughout college I always had like stainless steel appliances, and like it's not that big of a deal, but it's just one of those things where when you're paying over $4,000 in rent, and I'm like, my kitchen looks like it's from the 1980s, whereas, you know, that's what I mean by like New York, it's like that's what you pay to have. I feel like I spent a lot of time talking about rent. Let's talk about going out, what you spend on groceries, that sort of thing. The catch-22 with New York is there's not many affordable grocery stores. I honestly feel like the most affordable grocery store is Trader Joe's, and that's like kind of a fake grocery store. There is a Wegmans that opened up more downtown, and there's one that's going to be opening up more uptown in the next year or two, which I'm very excited for because I do love Wegmans. But if you live in New York, you know that I feel like convenience is huge and being able to walk to a grocery store. So the closest grocery stores to me is Whole Foods and Target, which I do end up getting a lot of food there. And if you were thinking about moving to New York, I didn't know this was a thing, but like the Targets in New York are gonna charge you more than a Target in the suburbs. So like I could buy a thing of Oreos in Pennsylvania for like, let's just say $5. In New York, it'd be $8. I didn't even know they could do that. And that's like not even including like the New York tax, of course. Like that's just like the price on the shelf. Same with like Chipotle's, Chick-fil-A. Like our Chick-fil-A and Chipotle is drastically more expensive here. Like I said, this is kind of common knowledge, but not, because I knew the tax stuff would be different, but I didn't know like just the listing price itself could be different. So that's something where, you know, prices definitely add up a little bit. Nothing like too crazy, but it can add up. My grocery bill, I would say per week is about, it's hard to know for sure, but I'd say give or take $300. I'd say I always do one big grocery shop every Sunday that's around $150. But then there's always things during the week that we forget to pick up, like get more chicken, get more bread, and that adds up. So I would say like about $300 a week. And I think it's just because we do a lot of our grocery shopping at Whole Foods, but because there's not much else around. I will say what has saved me so much is Amazon Fresh. Amazon Fresh, I avoided grocery deliveries for so long because I was like, they're crazy expensive. But the thing with Amazon Fresh is the groceries are cheaper. But then, so even with like the delivery fee on like Prime, which isn't that much if you have Prime, and then tipping your delivery person, it still ends up either evening out or a little bit cheaper. So usually once a week I'll do a big Amazon Fresh delivery, and then during the week I'll pick up like fresh veggies, fruits, and meats at Whole Foods because that's the most expensive. And when I first moved to New York, we were doing like all of our grocery shopping in Whole Foods and Target, and that was just like an arm and a leg. And people would be like, people would comment on my videos like, girl, go to Aldi or go to Giant. And I'm like, trust me, if they had that, I would, but they don't have that. So going out to eat is also expensive. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely places that are more affordable, but like you could get a standard pasta dish in New York for like $30. Whereas in the suburbs, like a steak dinner could be $30. So it's stuff like that, whereas a steak dinner here might be like $50. Obviously it depends on the restaurant, and drinks here are really expensive. Like I find, I've never been a big drinker, and if I do drink, I don't mind like buying a bottle of wine at my local grocery store and then having it here, because a glass of wine could be like $15, $16, $17 here, even more. And like a cocktail, like a fancy nice cocktail, oh my god, you don't even, that could be like $30. My friends and peers that go out a lot, their biggest thing is they could be like one night out for them and they're down $300 and they only got like 3 or 4 drinks, because when you add tip and like the drink being $30 to start, it's a lot of money, especially Ubers. I feel like transportation is another thing I need to talk about. So I try to subway everywhere for the most part, even if I'm on my own, unless it's late at night. If it's late at night and I'm alone, if it's like past 9 p.m. and I'm alone, I'll take an Uber. And Ubers definitely aren't cheap. If I'm out with people, I don't mind taking the subway late at night. You have to be very aware and like cautious, especially I feel like nowadays it's gotten worse and a little bit more like scary to ride the subway, so you have to be safe. But I think that's a big way, like I've noticed as you live in New York, you find little ways of where you can cut costs and then where you want to splurge on. And so transportation and Ubers is just not something I like splurging on. I really only take an Uber, like I said, if it's late at night, or if it's somewhere like I'm going home and I need to get to Penn Station and I have a ton of luggage with me. My biggest transportation cost usually ends up being like once a month. I'll either go home to visit my parents or have a weekend trip. Parents, why'd I say it like that? Or I'll have like a weekend trip with girls planned. And so an Amtrak round trip, meaning to get to like home and then back into the city, to Philly at least, could be like $150. So it's not bad, but I do like setting aside like $200 to $300 a month on just transportation, aka trains and subways. Like I would say a standard Uber, like let's say from Columbus Circle, so that's like 60th Street, to let's say like the West Village, which is more downtown, like that could be $50, $60. If it's a prime night, $70. So like $50 Uber one way That's like a whole week of gas money in the suburbs. Like, I won't lie, it can definitely be stressful having to take public transportation everywhere, and that's been the hardest part for me and the thing I hate the most about the city. But oh, sorry, I have my alarm. I will say, a lot of people are like, how do you spend this money to live in New York when you can live elsewhere for so much cheaper? And I just always think of the quote, like, you have to spend money to make money. So, you know, I don't have to be in New York for my job as being like a full-time content creator, but the amount of cool events and opportunities I've been a part of because I'm a content creator based in New York City, and brands will invite me to stuff because, you know, they're not going to invite influencers that don't live around. So I feel like it's just been great for that and super fun. Like I said, I don't need to live here, but there's definitely been pros, but even more so for my boyfriend. He's in tech sales, and so, you know, all the good tech companies and like finance and, you know, so many other jobs are based in New York. And so I feel like when you're young, especially if you're young, you don't have any commitment yet, it's great. It's a great place to start your life. Yes, paying this much in rent hurts, but it's not like we're gonna be 50 doing this. I don't plan to stay in New York more than 2-3 more years. I will hit my 2 years in New York this May. So I'm about 1.5 years in New York, almost 2 years. And so I'll probably end up doing 2 to 3 more years. So have like 5 years total in New York, which I feel like is perfect for, you know, really getting yourself started in, you know, the work world, or just setting yourself up for when you wanna leave New York. I will say it can be a little bit of like a rat race where some people get stuck in New York and you get used to that New York pay and you don't want to go elsewhere, and you don't want to lose that even though the cost of living could be cheaper somewhere else. Or some people just genuinely love the fast pace of life and the liveliness of the city, and I don't blame them. So a lot of people end up going to Jersey, and I feel like that's why the Jersey suburbs is popping, because most of those people have New York City based jobs and they'll just like commute in or whatnot. And shopping, obviously the shopping's so good here. I thought I'd spend a lot more money living in New York than I do, but all the good shopping's downtown, and I get lazy with taking public transportation like the subway. So it's kind of nice, because I always say that if good shopping was in walking distance to me, I would be spending so much more money. But I have to kind of go out of my way and take the subway, and then when you buy stuff and have all these bags and you're taking the subway back, it's uncomfortable, it's not fun. So I find that I honestly order so much more things online than when I lived in the suburbs. Like, you would think moving to the city I'd do more in-person shopping, but I find that like the inconvenience of like having to walk with all my shopping bags is so annoying, versus in the suburbs I would just drive to my local mall, get all my shopping bags, throw them in the car, and you can get so much. Whereas here you can, like, you have to be strategic. So I find I do most of my shopping online. And I do want to say and acknowledge I'm super grateful that I can afford to live here, and that I do live here, and that I get to have these experiences, because I don't want to downplay the cost of living in New York. It is not cheap. And I know some people that want to live here and physically can't. And so I don't take it for granted for a second. I know that even though maybe it physically pains me to spend the amount I do, I'm glad that I can do it, because this is only a small part of my life, and it's awesome. If you have any more New York City finance questions, please let me know. I try to be super transparent about all of it. But I hope this video was helpful. Please let me know if you have any more requests, and good luck on your move to New York City if you decide to move. And if not, I hope this video was entertaining for you on giving you some breakdown on the cost to living in New York City.